In the shadowed halls of Elaris, Queen Naerwin, ruler of the Dark Elves, sat upon her obsidian throne, her mind a cauldron of schemes. The ancient feud between the Light Elves of Elantia and her own people had festered for centuries, and she had grown tired of failed skirmishes and minor victories. The time for a decisive strike had come, but she knew she could not achieve it alone. To take down Elantia, she needed a powerful ally, one with a hatred for the Light Elves as deep as her own. That ally was none other than Lord Valor, the dark necromancer of the cursed kingdom of Vandariel. Lord Valor, though shrouded in mystery, was known for his obsession with reclaiming the staff of the Ghost Caller, a powerful artifact that had belonged to his father, the late ruler of Vandariel. His father had wielded the staff during a campaign against the dwarves of Gandria, nearly claiming victory in the bitter war. However, when Elantia's forces came to the aid of the dwarves, Valor's father was killed, and the staff was lost under the fortress of Stonehold, deep within Gandria. For years, Valor had sought to reclaim the staff, believing it was the key to his father's lost legacy, a weapon capable of summoning the restless spirits of the dead to fight for him. Naerwin knew of Valor's obsession. She also knew that if she could offer him a path to recover the Ghost Caller, he would be indebted to her, and more importantly, he would join her in her quest to crush Elantia. Arriving in person at Lord Valor's castle, Naerwin offered him an alliance as well as help in retrieving the staff he had long sought. Valor liked her plan, and he called upon his dark magic to open a portal directly into the heart of Gandria's capital. Naerwin, wrapped in her shadowed cloak, stepped through the portal, finding herself in the majestic halls of the Dwarven Kingdom. The stone corridors were filled with the sounds of blacksmiths striking metal and the distant murmurs of dwarven guards. Queen Naerwin stood by the window of her chamber in the heart of Gandria's stone castle, the morning light casting long shadows across the room. She had already set much of her plan into motion, but needed one final piece to ensure its success: a trusted ally within the kingdom of the dwarves. Dressed in a flowing gown of deep midnight blue, her pale skin stark against the dark fabric, she left her quarters and ventured into the corridors of the Dwarf King's citadel. As she made her way through the intricately carved stone passageways, she saw a figure approaching from the opposite end of the hall. It was Baldrick Ironmaul, a dwarf of considerable stature and influence, chief of the warrior clan and a figure often whispered about in Gandria's political circles. Naerwin had done her research well. Baldrick was ambitious, and ambition could always be turned to one's advantage. She caught his attention with a slight nod and a smile, her emerald eyes gleaming with an unspoken plan.
Baldrick Ironmaul.
She greeted him, her voice smooth like silk.
Just the dwarf I hope to see.
Baldrick stopped, surprised by her casual tone.
Queen Naerwin.
He replied, giving her a respectful bow.
How may I be of service?
I've been exploring this grand castle of yours.
She began, glancing down the corridor ahead.
But the stonework here is different than what I am accustomed to in Elaris. I thought perhaps you might give me a tour, show me the finest halls of your proud kingdom.
Baldrick raised an eyebrow but nodded.
I can show you around if it pleases you.
And with that, they began their walk down the long corridors of Gandria, the queen beside the dwarf warrior, their conversation drifting from topic to topic like leaves on a breeze.
Elaris must be quite different from these mountains.
Baldrick commented after a while, his tone cautiously polite.
Indeed it is.
Naerwin replied, her voice soft but measured.
Our cities are built into the darkness, cloaked by the shadows. We value subtlety and power, Though not unlike your people, we honor strength.
Baldrick grunted in agreement, guiding her past a series of ancient stone doors.
Strength is always respected. We've been fortunate. Things have gone well here in Gandria. In fact, we're opening a new mine in the coming days, one of the largest ore deposits we've seen in years.
Nerwin's eyes sparkled with interest, though she kept her expression calm.
A prosperous future indeed.
She said.
But prosperity alone is not always enough, is it?
Baldrick glanced at her, unsure of what she meant.
True enough,
He muttered, his brow furrowing. Nerwin pressed on, her voice taking on a more thoughtful tone.
Speaking of the future, the matter of heirs is always an uncertain one. I hear rumors that the future of Gandria is not entirely clear in that regard.
Baldrick tensed slightly. The subject of succession to the throne of Gandria was a touchy one, especially since Durin Stonefist's son had renounced the throne. He glanced sideways at Nerwin.
the future may be uncertain.
He admitted, though his voice was measured. Nerwin turned to him, her gaze piercing.
I have heard rumors too, Baldrick.
She said quietly.
Rumors that you may have a claim to the throne yourself.
Baldrick paused, surprise flickering across his rough features.
Where did you hear such talk?
He asked, his tone more defensive than he had intended.
There is no truth to it.
Orphan raised an eyebrow, her smile small and understanding.
You need not deny it.
She said softly.
Ambition is no sin, Baldrick. In fact, I admire it.
Baldrick was silent, taken aback by her directness. She continued, her voice quiet but confident.
You have power, respect, and the support of your clan. It is only natural that others would look to you as a leader. I am not here to expose you or spread these rumors further. On the contrary, in fact, I offer my support.
Baldrick blinked, still wary.
Support?
Erwin paused for a moment, making sure she had his full attention before speaking again.
I require a favor, and in return, I will give you something no one else can give. An ally in your quest for the throne.
Baldrick's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his face.
And what kind of favor would that be?
Nerwin's expression darkened slightly as she leaned closer.
I need your help to recover a powerful artifact, the Staff of the Spirit Caller, hidden deep in the old mines of Stonehold. It belonged to Lord Valor's father, and I need it returned to him.
Baldrick's expression hardened.
The staff of the Spirit Caller? You want me to hand over the necromancer's weapons? This staff was hidden for a reason.
Nerwin's eyes flashed with a cold, dangerous light.
I need its exact location, and that is all I ask of you. The reasons are none of your concern. What concerns you is that with my support, you could become King of Gandria. I offer you power, Baldrick, but I need your answer soon. My offer will not last forever.
Baldrick hesitated, his thoughts racing. He had long desired more power, but she was playing a dangerous game. He glanced at her, trying to read her true intentions.
I will consider your offer,
he finally said, his tone measured. Orphan's smile returned, but it did not reach her eyes.
Don't think too long.
She warned.
Such opportunities don't come along often, and I especially wouldn't want to hear rumors that you and your clan are preparing a coup.
The dwarf understood that this was a warning and should not underestimate her. Nerwin fixed him with a piercing gaze. He nodded in response, thereby indicating the weight of her words. Queen Nyerwin walked gracefully alongside Baldrick Ironhammer through the stone corridors of Gandria, the heavy echo of their footsteps filling the silence between them. The cool air of the dwarven stronghold seemed even colder under the weight of the secret conversation they had just shared. Baldrick, still pondering her cryptic offer, was about to speak again when the clanking of armor and the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted them. King Faylar of Elantia appeared around the bend, his golden hair reflecting the dim torchlight, his piercing gaze immediately falling on the two figures before him. His lips curved into a knowing smile, and his tone was full of mocking politeness as he spoke.
"Well, well, if it is not Queen Nerwin of Alaris,"
Faylar said, his voice dripping with sarcasm.
"What a surprise to see you here in the halls of Gandria. I had no idea you were such a patron of dwarven craftsmanship."
Nerwin's eyes narrowed slightly, but she kept her expression neutral, returning his sarcasm with a small, polite smile.
Your Majesty.
She greeted him.
Indeed. I have come to discuss trade with King Durin. His kingdom produces some of the finest weapons and materials, as I am sure you know.
King Durin, who had arrived only a few minutes earlier, stood slightly behind Faylar, stroking his braided beard and nodding in confirmation.
"Yes, it is true,"
he said hoarsely.
"Queen Nerwin and I have been discussing some trade agreements. Nothing out of the ordinary, just business between the kingdoms."
Faylar's smile widened, though his gaze remained sharp.
"Trade, of course. Is Lord Valor also involved in this deal? I have been informed that you have become very close to him of late."
His voice was casual, but the implication was clear. Nerwin met his gaze, her smile growing colder.
Ah, so that's it. I did wonder where this irritating feeling of being watched came from.
She gave a small, humorless laugh.
No, Valor is not involved. He is ill, and I am taking care of him as a kind neighbor. Tell me, King Faylar, do you think espionage is meddling in other people's affairs?
Faylar waved his hand dismissively, feigning innocence.
"Just worried about your safety, my dear. The world is full of dangers, and I would not want anything to happen to you, especially since King Durin said you've already been attacked."
Durin shuddered uncomfortably at the mention, remembering Nerwin's earlier story of how she had been ambushed on her way to Gandria. But it was clear that Faylar did not believe a word of it. Nerwin's smile remained, but her eyes darkened slightly.
I appreciate your concern,
she said coldly.
But I assure you, I am quite capable of handling myself. Besides, I am sure that your concern has more to do with my movements than with my personal well-being.
Faylar's smile faded slightly, replaced by a more serious expression.
"Oh, you know me too well, Nerwin. But I cannot help but notice that wherever you go, trouble seems to follow you. I trust that this trade you propose will succeed, and that you will receive what you seek."
The tension between them was palpable now, and Baldrick, who had remained silent, could feel the weight of their words. It was becoming clear that Nerwin's presence in Gandria was more than just a trade, and Faylar was determined to uncover her true motives. The mention of Lord Valor only confirmed what Baldrick had suspected. Dangerous forces were at play. Realizing the conversation was entering dangerous territory, Baldrick cleared his throat and stepped forward.
"My apologies, Your Majesties, but I must leave. I have urgent business."
Nerwin glanced at him, and though their eyes met only for a moment, Baldrick saw a glimmer of anticipation in her gaze. She was waiting for his decision. He nodded slightly to her, acknowledging the unspoken understanding between them, then excused himself and walked quickly down the hall. Once he was out of earshot, Nerwin turned to the two kings.
I think it's time for me to sleep as well,
She said, placing a delicate hand on her chest.
The excitement of the day has taken its toll, and I need rest.
King Durin, ever the gracious host, bowed his head.
Of course, Queen Nerwin. Rest well.
Faylar, on the other hand, studied her with a shrewd expression.
Yes, rest, Nerwin. We would not have you fall ill before your negotiations are concluded.
She smiled slightly, her manner as smooth as ever.
Thank you, Faylar. You are too kind.
With that, she turned and walked gracefully down the hall, disappearing into the shadows. Once she was gone, Durin turned to Faylar, his brow furrowed.
That was an interesting meeting,
he murmured. Faylar nodded, his expression thoughtful.
Indeed. I never trusted her, Durin. And whatever she seeks here in Gandria, it is not trade.
Durin sighed, rubbing his temple.
I do not like it either, but I will hear her out. Still, it seems there is more to this than I thought.
Faylar nodded encouragingly.
You must refuse her. I do not think her intentions are as harmless as she claims. My spies have reported that she is in league with Lord Valor. We must discover their plans.
Durin nodded gravely, and together they continued down the corridor, leaving behind the faint echo of Nerwin's footsteps in the distant halls of Gandria. The air in Queen Nerwin's chambers was cool and still the next morning, the early light filtering through the tall arched windows. She stood by the window, looking out at the distant mountains, deep in thought. A knock broke the silence, and she turned, her face calm but expectant.
Enter,
she said smoothly. The heavy door creaked, and Baldrick Ironhammer stepped inside, his broad frame casting a long shadow across the stone floor. His expression was a mixture of urgency and nervous excitement as he approached her, a rolled-up parchment in his hand.
My queen,
he said, bowing slightly.
I have what you asked for.
She's lips curved into a faint smile.
I trust it was not too difficult to obtain?
Baldrick shook his head, though his brow furrowed slightly.
No, but the risk was great. This
He handed her a roll of paper.
is a precise map of the mines beneath Stonehold. The location of the Spirit Caller's staff is marked, but there is a small garrison there. I do not know how we will get inside the castle itself. The guards are formidable.
Nerwin unrolled the parchment, her eyes taking in the detailed map with satisfaction. She ran a slender finger over the section marking the room where the staff was hidden. Her smile widened.
Don't worry about that.
She said in a quiet, silken voice.
I will handle the castle. Your task, Baldrick, is to gather as much of your forces as possible. Quietly, of course. We cannot afford to arouse suspicion, not yet. When the time comes, I will send you instructions. Then, and only then, will we act.
Baldrick nodded, though his eyes flickered with doubt.
And you are certain this plan will work? The staff is an ancient artifact. Its power is dangerous.
Her eyes flashed, but her voice remained calm.
That is precisely what we need it for. With the Spirit Caller's staff, Lord Valor and I will control powers beyond our enemy's comprehension. And as for your throne, Baldrick...
She met his gaze with cold determination.
Once this is over, no one will stand in your way.
The gnome hesitated for a moment, but then nodded decisively. His resolve strengthened.
I will gather my men. You can count on me.
Good.
she purred.
Now go. Make sure no one suspects anything. When the time comes, you will be richly rewarded.
Without another word, Baldrick turned and hurried from the room, his heavy boots echoing down the hall. Once the door closed behind him, Nerwin remained where she stood, the parchment clutched tightly in her hand. Everything was falling into place. A few hours later, there was another knock on the door. This time a guard entered, bowing slightly before speaking.
Your Majesty, King Durin awaits you in the guest hall. I have been sent to escort you.
Nerwin nodded slightly.
Very well.
She said, smoothing her robes before following the guard out of her chambers. As they approached the guest hall, Nerwin's expression changed, becoming more regal and reserved, hiding the triumph she felt inside. When the doors opened, she was greeted by the sight of King Durin standing next to King Faylar. Both kings turned to face her, their faces solemn but cordial.
Your Majesty.
Durin began, his voice rough but polite.
We have discussed your trade proposal at length.
The queen bowed her head slightly, feigning expectation.
And what have you decided?
Durin glanced at Faylar and let out a deep exhalation.
I regret to inform you that we must decline your offer. The risks are too great for us at this time. Our weapons are needed elsewhere, and I cannot afford to exhaust our supplies.
Nerwin's face fell, her expression carefully edited to appear genuinely disappointed.
I see,
she said quietly, as if troubled by the decision.
It is most unfortunate. I had hoped that we could strengthen the ties between our kingdoms. But I understand.
King Faylar stared at her, his eyes narrowing slightly as if he sensed something behind her words. Nerwin caught his gaze but kept her composure. She knew Faylar was suspicious of her every move, but it hardly mattered now. She had already gotten what she came for.
Well then,
she continued, her voice laced with false concern.
I suppose I will take my leave and return to Alaris. Perhaps in time you may reconsider.
Durin nodded solemnly.
Perhaps we will revisit this matter in the future.
Nerwin gave a gracious bow of her head.
Thank you for your time, King Durin, King Faylar.
She acknowledged both rulers before turning toward the door.
Farewell, and may your lands prosper.
Durin muttered something in response, but Faylar's eyes never left her. Nerwin could feel his gaze burning into her back as she walked from the hall. Once back in her chambers, she locked the door behind her and pulled out a set of shimmering runes from a hidden pouch. Her fingers moved deftly, arranging the runes on the stone floor in an ancient pattern. She whispered a soft incantation under her breath, and the air around her began to ripple with dark energy. Moments later, a swirling portal materialized before her, its edges crackling with shadowy magic. With one last glance around the room, Nerwin stepped through the portal, disappearing into the swirling darkness as suddenly as she had arrived. As the portal closed behind her, only a faint trace of her dark magic lingered in the air.
We twirl, we spin, beneath the moon, like shadows thin. Voices whisper, winds do sing. Dance, my lady, feel the spring. Castles watch the evenings play. Stars above, they guide the way. Flames to flicker, hearts at bay. Dance, my lady, night till day. so free. Join the revel, come to me. Dance so wild, neath the tree. Spirits high, eternally. Through the halls, a tune so light. Feet are moving, hearts delight. Moon's embrace, a shining night. Dance, my lady, in the night. Ancient stones, they hold the song. Whispers of a time so long. Sing aloud, we all belong. Dance, my lady, heart so strong. Ooh yeah, yeah. Join our ring, feel the magic that we bring. Echoes of an age we sing. Dance, my lady, feel the spring.